Hey, what's going on, you guys? This is just jumping on real quickly for an evening here on what is it? What day is it today? Actually, is it a Monday? Cleaning through all my old stuff at the moment, and I just found a pile of like old sketchbooks and whatnot. I was gonna do a bit of an old sketchbook tour, just to kind of relax, taking a break because I've been cleaning all day. So I figured, now that I kind of rummaged through some things, I can kind of bring it out and maybe like share some old stuff with you guys. I think some people have asked me in the past of like, sharing old work or sketches or drawings and books and stuff like this. So I figured now would be a good time. So of course, as you guys are kind of jumping in, if anybody has any questions or comments, you guys are welcome to ask, and I'll try to reply to the best that I can while we're doing this. I'm not going to be doing any kind of drawing or demo session at the moment. So, I apologize if that's what you're looking for at the moment. That's not what's going to happen. But we're just going to go through some old work and just kind of talk about, the history of some of them. And of course, if you guys have questions about your own kind of beginnings in art and design and sketching and stuff like this, we can definitely talk about it. So the pile that I have going on right now is that I have some old drawings here from the times when I was around high school to a little bit afterwards. So I must have been around 19 years old around this time. I have a pile of brown sketchbooks over here. This was a time when I was in college at Art Center, so I was probably in my early 20s, 22, 23. So, this work is more than almost 20 years old now at this point. So, a lot of this is also kind of like, I bring it up because due to the fact that I'll be turning 40 here real soon, actually in about a week. So showing work 20 years ago is kind of funny to take a look at. So, stuff like this is from what, 1999? Yeah, so this is, again, a long time ago, well, for me. But here's some old work. But this is when I was like, even at the time when I was 18, 19 in high school, I was creating characters and stories and worlds and stuff like this. And a lot of this stuff would just be ridiculous ideas and stuff that's highly cliche and inspiration to the things I looked at from comics and animes and stuff like this. But, a lot of this stuff I would just do in ink, but there's pencil work. You can see the pencil work underneath there. So it's really rough pencils at first. I really liked working in large format. So this is like an 11 by 14 Bristol. And I would pencil these, and I wouldn't do thumbnails beforehand. I would just kind of draw right into them with pencil, and then I would ink it. So I was about 19 when I was doing this stuff in high school. In my senior year, I'd have a good friend of mine, Izzy, and Izzy Madrano and I would draw together constantly. Somebody asked me, like, is my signature similar to how I signed it today? And it's not. My signature is here. I only write my last name now. So back then I used to write my entire name, or my middle name, the last name. But this is a character I created called the Hare Hunter. This weird world of like anthropomorphic like rabbits and bunnies and this guy who like battles him and stuff like this. It was actually really inspired stylistically from like Joe Mad and those guys back in the time. But again, this is pretty old work. Some other stuff. This is literally a year afterwards. This is 2000, February. This is when I was doing a lot of work inspired either by Joe Mad or I'd be inspired by Jeff Darrow. Jeff Darrow if you guys don't know who that artist is, he's a comic artist who's been around. He's worked on a lot of films and graphic novels and illustration work. But a lot of you guys may know his stuff from like The Matrix. He was a concept artist for that. But he's also known for this character, what's that, Big Guy, and Rusty, the little boy robot. And of course his Hard Boiled series. But I was super interested in like his work because he was all about like crazy intricate detail, Jeff Darrow. So I would try to imitate his work like crazy as well. So again, that was about 20. No, I'm still 19 here. About 19 at this time because May is when my birthday is. So I wouldn't have been 20 just yet. But I used to, again, like I said, pencil work, all this stuff beforehand. As you can see, I didn't even erase this very well. I left the pencils as they were. And you can just kind of see the ink in there. But I tried to match my ink style to like Jeff Darrow as closely as I could. So you can kind of see that like really heavy line weight from one side, thinner to another. Yeah, this is all Jeff Darrow inspired. Based on his characters also. Here's a bit of a distance for you. But again, this size of paper was kind of normally what I like to work at. Of course, I would have smaller sketchbooks too, but I really loved working really big. It is Hitler's head. I always had this like fascination of like World War II and, how the Nazis were like these crazy occult fanatics and insane people. And, Mike Mignola and Hellboy was a huge inspiration for me too. And Jeff Darrow played with a lot of that kind of storylines. This is when The Matrix came out. So this is 1999. And this is inspired by when Jeff Darrow would do all this like crazy bullet work, and Matrix had released in the theater. So I watched The Matrix in the theater for the first time. Again, I was 19. I went with me, my brothers, and a friend of mine. And again, the movie was just insane, blew our brains away. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I would just draw characters and stuff like this, kind of inspired by The Matrix. I also like robots and mechs that were like all very much Jeff Darrow inspiration. But, you know, a lot of this stuff, again, we'd pencil sketch first, and I would ink it after. You can see how rough the lines are, really. Yeah, so, you know, insane comics, crazy movies, you know, animations. I was super into all those things. Here's another one. This is in 2000. There's no date on this one, but I know this is pretty much around 2000, 2001. This is about a year or two afterwards. This is a pencil drawing. I remember this one, doing this one. I remember this one because I was inspired by the Wolf Brigade. What do they call that? It was an anime that came out. It was a series from the 70s, a long time ago. And they made an animation. The guy who did Ghost in the Shell, the director, made another one called The Wolf Brigade. And I remember watching that. It was so crazy as an anime movie. And I love the character designs in it. So I wanted to do an interpretation of that as well, too. How old am I? I'm going to be 40 next week. So I'm showing work right now that's 20 years old. 20 years old. So this is probably 2001, 2000, maybe something like that. Ghibli was definitely a huge inspiration for sure, too. Absolutely. Sorry, I didn't get to show you some of the other details. But yeah, this is all pencil work. Yeah. Oh yeah, 30 years. I'm sorry, what am I talking about? 20, 30. For some reason, I'm thinking like in the last 2 decades. But this is actually 3 decades. Oh my gosh. Just made me feel much older all of a sudden. Well, you know, the question of like, you know, how much did I practice in those years? And it was constantly, you know, I would draw all the time. You know, in high school when I was 19, I started high school here in the US and when I was 15 years old, graduated when I was 19, went to a 2-year college for an associate's degree in graphic design. So ever since, you know, in high school, I had a good friend of mine. We would draw all the time, day in, day out. Of course, you know, I had my homework and schoolwork and stuff like this too, but I was an okay student. But I was so much more infatuated with drawing. Here's another old one. I'm trying to find the date on this one here. This one's definitely another couple years afterwards, I would say. All the time, yeah. But this one was inspired by Mucha, Alfonso Mucha. Or Mucha, or Mucha, some people say it. I pronounce it Mucha. Alfonso, the Art Nouveau styling. It's all pencil work. This is drawn on vellum. You can see the paper's all crinkled up right now. It's all super old. But I did a light pencil drawing at first, and then I kind of lined it heavier with a heavier lead. I think it's because I'm outside, and the echoing is making it sound weird. And I think it's also because my voice is parched. I've been working all day. Normally, after I've been talking through a session of like classes, my voice kind of goes a bit deeper. But if I haven't really talked all day because I've been working on the house, so this is my place right now. So I've been cleaning my entire place, backyard, and trying to organize all my boxes. All my trash is like way over here, so I've been organizing like crazy. So I haven't really spoken a word all day. So my voice is kind of like not been used. Maybe that's why. Do I sketch with pencil first and apply ink later? This is back when I was in high school, when I was young. When I was drawing this one, I was probably 21, 20. This is the original still. This is ink, but this is actually a design of my tattoo that I did. I drew this one when I was 17. I drew it and I inked it, and then I kept it for like 2 years, and I got a tattoo of this when I turned 20. My dad was not happy with that, but I was actually imitating him because he had a big cat tattoo also on his forearm, so I wanted the big cat tattoo as well too. I was trying to copy. You know, you kind of get impressioned by your parents and stuff like that, but this is a drawing on just vellum paper. Interesting question. Can you go from, I'm sorry, I missed that. zero to hero in terms of drawing, buying textbooks and stuff like that, fully independent of no formal schooling. Anything is possible, but I would say the percentage and chance of that is probably very, very small. And I'm not saying, again, that it's not that you couldn't try and potentially get at a relatively competitive level, but in terms of getting to a point where you can compete with people who have been working on this for 20 years, who have gone through formal schooling for 5-10 years, I'd say be a little bit more difficult. But that doesn't mean you have to go to like a university or school. I'm just saying that there are things you could be doing beyond just looking at textbooks and just working on your own stuff. You got to be able to work with a lot of other people. So being in a school, the benefit is being able to work with instructors, mentors, but also other students. This is a piece from 2000. Okay, this is 20 years, not 30 years. It's 2021 right now, 20 years. So yeah. But yeah, I was about 21 at this point, I think. Old stuff as well. This is based on a comic. Learn gesture drawing first. I learned structure first. Learn structure of forms, proportions, primitive shapes, and that kind of stuff. Understand the rules and then break the rules, right? Gesture is not necessarily breaking the rules, but it's about being able to flow, adapt, find balance, movement, posing. But then using structure, you're able to potentially have a better foundation to explore that area of gesture. Let's see, I'm looking for the first book here. This is actually my old sketchbooks from dynamic sketching when I was a student at Art Center. I think this one is 2003. This one is 2004. This one's earlier, yeah. This is when I was in Art Center in college. So I was about 22 at the time when I was doing these drawings. I started Art Center when I was 21 years old. And, Art Center is in Pasadena, California. I went to a 2-year college after high school, and then I joined Art Center. And I took this course, in which what I teach now, when I was 22. So it was a second year in at Art Center. So the very first sketchbook that I did of this class, I have somewhere else, but I don't have it here. This is when I started taking it. No, it was the same class. So I started continuing the class and basically started a new sketchbook. So these are drawings from when I was in college. So I was 22, going on 23 at the time. I'm sorry, this is the Viscom 4 stuff. This is actually the term afterwards. I'm sorry. This book. Yeah. This is 04. Anyways, I can just go through each of these. But these are all old sketches from when I would have been 23 here. So this is at the time when I took the class, we would do a lot of ink drawing. So we go straight into ink using pen, ballpoint pens, felt tip pens, high-tech pens. And that's what the class kind of asked for. Norm, my mentor instructor, taught this class dynamic sketching. He was the first one to kind of originate it. And the big push was about building confidence using ink. So we were forced to only use pens at the time. And I favored, again, like pencils and ballpoint before this stuff. So before taking this class, I was much more precarious on like going straight ink. I normally would have wanted to pencil it. But this is at the time when I took this class that I really wanted to push more on ink drawing. So this is again 2004. I was at a workshop doing brush pen work. Again, this is on location drawing. So during the class, we go on location. We would draw things like environment stuff, animals and plants and whatnot. My favorite thing to draw, really, at the time, it was mostly character work, like humans and that kind of stuff. But currently now, it's honestly just the act of drawing. It's not really what it is I'm drawing. I could draw anything. And I enjoy drawing everything as well, too. So there is no one specific thing that I would kind of fall towards because I just, like I said, anything that goes into my head, either through visual observation or just out of, spontaneous thing and my brain feeds it to me, I just wanted to kind of draw it. So it tends to jump around quite a bit. Again, these are all observational drawings. So these are on location. So this is at the zoo, LA Zoo. This is in 2004 again. This Indian rhino is still there, I think. This vulture is definitely still there. What manga? I would always recommend Akira, right? I think that's still one of the most quintessential, most amazing masterpiece of manga ever. Yeah, this is all stuff from the museums locally. All very tribal, kind of Inuit, Alaskan tribes, a lot of North American tribes. Going to like the zoo, the car museums, tank museums. Again, I'm about 23 at the time when I'm doing this stuff, when I was in school. So do I ever do any underdrawing while doing the class? So when I was in school, we would sometimes use marker, but I would mostly just go straight pen because that's what the class was about. We were not allowed to use pencil or ballpoint. How do you do observation before drawing? Well, we would actually basically visualize either on the page directly while we were thinking, or we try to think beforehand. Yeah, so Copic markers are definitely ones we would use to basically draw underneath sometimes. And the art school that I went to was the Art Center College in Pasadena. But a lot of times when we're observing, again, this like truck and stuff like that, we wouldn't just start looking at it and just draw right away. We'd observe it, but try to think about and visualize in our head what kind of forms or shapes or even things like where the perspective is would be at first, and then we would try to match it on the page, essentially. But that's why observational drawing is so tough, because it relies so much on your eyes, on being able to transfer information. But then not only that, the reason why drawing is so difficult for the layman, the regular person, is because it's the act of scaling. So what our brain's doing as artists in observational drawing is that you're scaling something down from big to small, down to your page. So, but your brain is doing a very complex thing to match up to all the things like spacing, you know, line weights, detail information, all that kind of stuff. I use gel pens too sometimes. I've used high-tech back in the day, but I still primarily use fountain pens today. In terms of improving perspective, it's taking more classes on perspective, honestly. I took it the first time and I did a horrible job on it at Art Center. And then I took it a second time when I was about to graduate because I felt like I had to basically strengthen it. But it's also just a very active using it every day, honestly. Even this is the most primitive stuff like building boxes and forms and shapes and structures, but understanding how that works is a basic primitive degree. But yeah. Do I stress on keeping the sketchbooks neat? Well, back then, not really, because you can kind of see I just kind of placed them all over the place. You know, I didn't really think about where they were going to go as much. But I would definitely change that now, because currently today, I'm very much more attentive about my layout, where the sketches are going, where they're going to be placed, all that kind of stuff. More observational drawings here at the zoo. This is still 2004. This is in the chimpanzee enclosure. This is just like making up trains. This one was, I made one up. This one is at location wise. So what I would even do is I would draw on location and then I would make up stuff. So sometimes I look at something that was real and then I would create my own version of it right afterwards. Well, that's the thing, drawing Barrel, is that you're asking when did you finally start drawing everything completely from imagination? Well, even at the time when I was in high school, again, the old drawing back over here, this is done in 1999, so I was in high school. This is from my imagination. So I wasn't looking at anything. I wasn't referencing anything. I was borrowing styles, but it's because I was imitating them for so long beforehand. So by the time I got to this point, I was already kind of like, I already just understood how to draw in this way. So a lot of this stuff I got already kind of come up with in my head. Well, I think the sketchy lines or the feathery lines that you're asking about, Laurent is it has to do with more the confidence of putting the pen down. So if you feather, right, you tend to put a lot of movement in there. It doesn't necessarily convey a strength of confidence. So you got to be able to hit that line with 1 or 2 strokes. So even here during the school, I was trying to do that with 1, 2 strokes here, 1 stroke here, 1 stroke there. And it may not necessarily come out the most accurate, and I might necessarily not hit it very well, but the idea is that the act of being, I guess, very aware of your line, I guess the word we're trying to use is line economy. So how many lines you actually really have to go through to place down for a shape. But that takes a long time to build and lots of repetition. Again, I don't hit it all the time. You'll see some areas here where line-wise I'm really, really rough and things are kind of like built up super heavy because I'm trying to cover up, mess-ups essentially. And these are all observation on location at the museum for tanks. So I'd be sitting maybe about 15 feet away from some of these, drawing them when I was younger. I still remember some old drawings because I look at them and I can see like how line weights, like I still remember to this day of when I was younger when I drew this, I didn't like this portion right here. You see how heavy that feels on that side? But I felt that back then also because I have a memory of it. Drawing buildings, I think a lot of that is the organization of details. It's all about decision making because you can't draw everything on the building. So you got to be able to organize it, but then select the key things that you think communicates well to the viewer. But that takes experimentation and practice, right? So with gesture, again, we had mentioned earlier about structure. Learn structure first. Proportion, shape, language, form. This is not my drawing. This is my mentor's kid who took my sketchbook and drew a snake-mobile. Again, my teacher, Norm, was teaching the class at the time. And I became very close with him and his family. I just saw his son yesterday for his birthday as well, too. He's now in his, 22? And I've known that kid since he was like 7. But yeah, he would draw in my sketchbook when I was a kid. The next Dynamic Bible will be coming out at the end of this year, I'm hoping. But definitely this year. It's one of my favorite warplanes, the P-38 Lightning. This one I just kind of made up as well, too. Yeah, I'll just make up stuff. So I would be drawing a bunch of tanks, and I just create my own versions of like mechs or machines. So I just make these up. So this one whole sketchbook was done during the class, during the time when I took the class when I was 24. This was the first book in the class, which I filled about 2 of them in. Using watercolor at the time. This is that F4U Corsair. This is not the, yeah, it is. No, I'm sorry, that's not the Corsair. That's something else. Anyways, some birds that we draw at the museum. Some more observations. People. This is at the airport. I remember that. Also the seating. I don't remember where I was traveling to. Probably back home during the breaks at college. This book is relatively done. So this is 2000, at the end of, so it's 04 to beginning of 05. So it's the end of 2004. Here's another book. Again, these are all from the dynamic sketching class. This one, date-wise, I wonder if I have a date on this one. No. But again, I was super interested in clay, Heinrich Clay at the time. Sometimes I would like photocopy sketches from books and I would paste them in there of inspiration. Notes. I haven't read this note in a long time. This was during the time when I was in the class. Let's see what it wrote here. To be fluent in the creative process is to be able to generate a wide range of possibilities and ideas. To be fluent in the drawing process is to be intuitive when placing pen to paper, responding with ease and grace to one's thoughts. It's a quote that I picked up when I was in class with Norm. These are just drawings out of my head. I remember these because in the class of dynamic sketching, what we would do at the very beginning of the class, and I did this as a tradition also, is that as people would come into it, nobody knows each other. Nobody knows who the instructor is. And we would sit there, and back at the time when I was in the school, in class, Norm, at the beginning of it, would call us up, individually, each of us. And we would draw on the chalkboard. He'd say, draw this, draw that, draw that. And we'd give us like 5 minutes or less. And so while we were sitting down watching these people draw on the chalkboard, struggling, we'd also be drawing as well too. This is the first day, first morning of the class. And this is something I do myself also. So I had people come up to the board and I'd say, draw this, draw that. And so this is the things that he would ask, like draw a dog or draw a bicycle, draw a gun. This is the first page of the classroom. Dinosaur guns. So this is a note that I'll be taking in the class. This is for a project that we're working on. I remember this page. This was a double page spread of a series of insects and bugs. Drawn from reference, photographs, out of books and stuff. Why I did this? I did it on my own time. It wasn't really a part of the homework. It was just more like I just wanted to draw bugs. So I would grab a lot of photographs and pages out of them and just sketch away. But this is at a time when I would like sketch over detailed. I would hatch like crazy. Maybe sometimes too much. But looking back on this old work, I don't look back on it and be like, oh, it's terrible. But I look back on it thinking, man, the way I thought, what I was looking for was different. and the improvements obviously are there. But looking back on it, I don't think like, oh, how I was so terrible or anything like this. I wasn't. I enjoy what I was doing. I wasn't the best, but I also knew, I enjoy what I was, going for, and I was able to spend the time on it. Creating fish. Just coming up with them. I do commissions mostly at shows, for instance, like Comic Cons and expos. The recent commissions I've been doing is because of Super Con. I don't normally take them off time. These are observation. This is like the aquarium in Long Beach, California. Rockfish. So this is actually on site. So I'm holding my sketchbook and looking at this stuff and drawing it. So when you're trying to draw while these animals are moving around, you can imagine the difficulty of that. But the quick observations of interpreting form is what really kind of saves you. Because obviously these animals would have moved way, past where they would have been when I started the drawing. But being able to establish the base structures of forms like circles and shapes of, I don't know, whatever you use, and then be able to add the details afterwards. In terms of where you can buy the Dynamic Bible, go to superanius.com. This is a page of just fish. I just made these ones up. I still remember doing this one in class as well too. Again, a lot of these drawings I would do weren't always for class. I would just do them because I would always be drawing. Again, here I'm still 24. This is in my 3rd term at Art Center. That means it's about a year and a half. No, I'm sorry, 2 years in, 3 years in. Close to around that time. So this is when I took the class the 2nd time from this book here. Would I recommend to go to that level of details? Sure, why not? But also find a way to keep things as simple as possible. Find the range, understand your limits. Normally, I would be drawing for this class several pages a day. But in terms of how many hours per week, we're at Art Center, we'd be pumping out per class upwards of 20 hours a week, 15 hours, would be pretty average. Because there's some days I would sit and draw for like 5-6 hours, so doing 20 was pretty standard for us. So the Dynamic Bible there's only one under superanius.com. The old one that I had done in the past is not available anymore at the moment. It should ship to Mexico under superanius.com. Brush pens I still use. I use the Pentel color brush pens. Again, for people that are joining in, I'm showing an old sketchbook tour of books from the days. I had an old pile of drawings from high school, and I have a pile of books from college days. So this is that time when I was Art Center. So these are drawings of like cars and vehicles we'd be drawing on site. I remember this car. This is the Bugatti. This is a 1931 Bugatti. Such a difficult car to draw. It was hard to get that proportion of equal size correct. I would always highlight everything. You can see how much highlight I place in everywhere. It's not heavy, but I used to use a lot of it. Did I learn the Riley method? I know of it, but I never really used it that much. Practice of hatching, textures and hatching. When I was a student doing this stuff. More observations. This is the LA Arboretum. This is 2004. March 3rd. So when a question is, when I started teaching at Art Center, or teaching in general, did you wait till you were ready, or was it sort of a leap of faith? It was more like it fell on my lap. So I started primarily teaching at Art Center due to my mentor, my teacher, tragically passing away. So they asked me to take over for him. So I couldn't say no. I was 28, 29 when I started teaching. So I took it upon to, fill those shoes. Yeah, so questions like, what do I do with all these old sketchbooks? Right now, if I show you way back over there, you see that doghouse? They're filled with sketchbooks. Because I was trying to move them from my old place, so they were piled in there. So a bunch of them are in there right now. There's a bunch in my house, and I just stack them. They're just sitting around. Yeah, I'll be doing more Twitch streams real soon. Small little mech. That one was definitely inspired by Shiro. What would I recommend beginners to learn first? It's basic still life drawing, perspective, early introduction, just using materials. This one was a practice on doing basically abstraction to then solving a visual. So I think of an animal, generally, and I use a marker, and I'll go in there and just kind of loosely, roughly sketch out a pose or something, not thinking too hard. And then I put a piece of tracing paper on top of that, and I try to problem solve what that detail would look like. This was me just practicing when I was a student. So I would do like an underlay quick sketch, and then I'll try to do a problem solve sketch on top. And these are all just out of my head, making them up. When I was a student. This book has lasted pretty well. I mean, they haven't been like torn apart and eaten away. Again, these are more than 20 years old. But well, the pencil and ink don't necessarily blend well together, but it can work. I mean, it's not to say that I haven't seen that. It's just that it's not very common. By memory, yeah. This is just tracing paper. Just regular old tracing paper. Rough sketch. Marker. Pen on top. This is with the high-tech pen. I can tell by the line. Somebody asked about the sketchbook. This is the Canson brand. C-A-N-S-O-N. Canson. They made a scrapbook. That's brown tone. That's what we used to draw in back in the day. This is stuff just making up creatures. Illustrations, storylines. 2004 still, this one. This is from an excerpt from a little short story. I forgot what it was though. This is LA Zoo. This is March 17th, 2004. How long was I drawing before Art Center? I've been drawing since the age of 5. Everything was from memory. Or not really memory, from combination of memory and imagination. So this is, again, live drawings at the zoo. 2004. Quick sketch. And some of these animals move so fast, you can just only get a hint of them. So you have to draw so quickly. I remember this sketch right here. This pied hornbill. I really like this one. I still remember this drawing. Was it stressful being at Art Center? Yeah, of course. It was stressful because of the competition. There were so many amazing people there. It was stressful because of the teachers, because they put so much on you. It was stressful because you put it on yourself. You weren't sleeping. You were working all the time. It was tiring. More head studies of people. This is at the Islands restaurant. This is March 21st, 04. Me and my friends would go to like restaurants and places and sit down and eat and just draw. This is from I took this book to a Comic-Con in Los Angeles, again, in 2004. If you guys don't know who this artist is, this is an original sketch that I got from him. This is an artist named Phil Noto. Phil Noto. He's an awesome artist. And I went to that Comic-Con walking around. I had my sketchbook on me. I asked him, would you do a quick sketch? And I loved his work. So he did a drawing of Electra. It's an awesome piece. Sometimes I forget I have like originals of like other people in here sometimes. Art Center is in Pasadena, California. Do I recommend using pen to study? Absolutely. Beautiful drawings. Have I done many comics or graphic novels? I've only done one recently of my own graphic novel. Before then, I mostly worked in design for games and animation kind of stuff. I worked in concept art and games for about 7 years. This is all on location, drawing to zoo. Using high-tech pen, I can tell with a line. High-techs are gel pens, essentially. This is at the Nethercutt Museum. This is March 25th. So this is like page after page. This is not that many days in between these pages right now. More circle practices. This is at the Air Museum. More drawings of airplanes. These were so tough to draw when I was a student. I had a hard time with airplanes. We use markers sometimes for color. This is all Copic markers. the Sherman tank. Other times I just make up planes. Start sketches and I wouldn't do so well and I would stop it, you know. Yeah, the heavy hand thing is a really difficult aspect because, you know, people are sometimes more naturally light-handed or pressure controlled. Other people are really heavy-handed. You know, in those kind of situations, you know, kind of daily regiment to practice on being aware, I think is the biggest thing about it. So as long as you're aware that you're gripping really tightly and pressing really hard, you might be able to actually step back away from it to readjust, better control yourself, and then go back at it again. So do I prefer sketch by taking reference images or live? Both. So we would draw on location, and then we take a photograph and then draw off location. Advice for animal drawing, understand its structural form, its proportions, right? Basic forms as well too. Don't worry so much about the anatomy in the beginning. How do you interpret form? This is a sketch inspired by Phil Noto. This is when Kill Bill came out. So I did a sketch of Kill Bill. Would I recommend Art Center? I don't know. I mean, people ask that all the time, and I have a whole long-winded explanation as to why I would and why I wouldn't. At the end of the day, if I could boil it down to a very simple answer is, yeah, I would. But being mindful of your situation based on your location and financial means. So does it mean it's guaranteed you'll succeed by going to Art Center? No, but there's a lot of benefits of going there for sure too. But not just Art Center, but any sort of college or school, in my opinion. It's kind of getting dark out right now, so the sun's going down, so my tour of sketchbooks here might end very soon. I'll just kind of quickly peek through a couple last ones before we lose light. This is, I think this is actually earlier, this sketchbook. This is stuff I was creating out of the, what is that, the character called? Mr. Toad. The white spots were a gel pen, white highlight gel pen. This is with marker. Yeah, this is with watercolor. This one was marker. The hair, the tortoise in the hair. I was drawing characters in cars for some reason. This book was 2003, I'm pretty sure. This book was before the earlier ones. Again, here's that practice using the quick under sketch with the tracing paper on top, but this time was like mechanical stuff. More of those. My ellipses were pretty terrible. Coming up with more ideas, concepts. This one was about an imitating orchid. I thought about a plant or a flower that would imitate other insects, and it would like be a carnivorous thing and eat them. So even while I would draw observationally, I would always come up with ideas. Seems that way, doesn't it? It's kind of odd how sometimes quality goes up and down. Where I think this might have been earlier. Because this book, especially with the Heinrich Clay stuff on top of it, I feel like it was earlier. But I could also be wrong. This sketch right here is a very strong memory. This one. I was sitting in front of this motorcycle. This is in, again, 2003 or 4. Let me see if I can find a date real quickly. I just want to see if I can find maybe one date of year inside the pages. I'm kind of flipping through real quickly. I can't find any. So it's either going to be 2003 or 4. But this sketch in particular was the one that I did, and I sat and I really liked how it came out. From like the ellipses and the line work and the focal points and all that kind of stuff. Because again, I was sitting in front of it. It was in the summertime. It was hot as hell. And I was, again, like 3 feet away from it, drawing at the museum. And it was difficult because it's such a complex machine. But this was straight pen too. But I remember when I finished it, I was like, man, it felt satisfying. But then afterwards, you know, the drawings fluctuate again. Kind of gets worse and good and then bad, depending on the feeling of it. Some of the cards after that next week, I wasn't doing so well. I was having trouble with these ones, remember. Where do I start to be able to draw from imagination? By drawing from observation. Look at real stuff in the world around you. Take a lot of photographs. Use your phone. Draw from references. Read a lot of books. Back in the day, I was drawing many hours a day. Many hours a day. When I was a student at this time. Today, a couple hours here and there. Like, I haven't drawn at all today. I may. Last night I drew for about maybe 2 hours, 3 hours. Today I'll probably draw a bit more if I can. This is all gouache paint on top of the drawings. Is a concept artist position a good job to strive for? Sure. But it's hard. It's competitive to get into. But it can be a lot of fun. I'd recommend it. Especially if that's something you really want to do. This is me coming up with airplanes as a student. Alright, I think we're losing about maybe, I don't know, 10 more minutes, maybe less, before we lose complete light here. But in any case, thank you guys for joining in. I just wanted to, kind of flip through some of these old sketchbooks, and maybe I'll do it again at some point later on if I find more of them, and share more ideas and concepts, and just the history and experience of things I've had in the past, and the questions that you guys are having right now obviously pertains to, the things I was thinking about when I was young. Well, I did a lot of oil paintings when I was younger at Art Center. We did a lot of acrylic and oils. What do you think is the least competitive art job? I don't think there is one. I think all art jobs, to whatever degree, are going to be competitive. How did I keep myself being motivated? From friends. Tons of, a lot of the friends at Art Center, they were all just as, good, if not better, what I was doing. So it really drove each other to, really push to increase the quality. Yeah, so I had one more book, but maybe next time I'll bring that up next, show you guys. But again, thank you guys for joining in. Again, there's not enough light to show everything right now, but we'll come back on. I might do a Twitch stream later next week, maybe around Monday or Tuesday or so. But I'm hoping to jump onto that as soon as I can. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this quick little share of old tour of sketchbooks. But have a good evening, weekend, all that kind of stuff as it comes to a close, and I'll see you all next time.